Well, thank you for joining me. Today's video is not going to be really what you would call a feel-good video. I don't know that it will inspire you, encourage you, or anything else. I don't really know what it will do for you, what it will mean. I'm hoping that it does resonate with you in some fashion or another. But the topic of today's content is on how I deal with grief. Grief is just another normal part of life. You experience grief when you become extremely disappointed with something, expectations are shattered, dreams are crushed, or perhaps there's a loss of a loved one, or any number of given things. There's a lot of things that could spawn emotional and mental angst. And I want to speak to this because we all have different ways of coping. And I'm not going to sit here and say that my perspective and my approach to things are the right way or the best way. That's not the purpose at all. The purpose of this is simply to say that this is my way of dealing with things. And I'm always open to other ideas and suggestions, and if you have any, you can leave them down in the comment section below. And while you're down there, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already. But the reason I'm talking about this is because last Wednesday, which was Valentine's Day, was not a very good one. That was not a very good day for us because we had to take one of our cats down to the emergency vet clinic, and to make a long story short, I had to put it down. Now, it's always been, I've lost other animals before, but it's been a long, long time. And anytime I hear about anybody saying, oh, we lost our dog, we had to put our dog or cat down, I always think that's sad, but I'm not sure that I feel as much towards it as I ought to. I sympathize with the people, and I offer my condolences, but it becomes much more real when it happens to you. And I don't want to suggest that losing an animal is akin to losing another person in your life. And certainly when we experience grief, this kind of loss is not the only way that we experience grief. But I'm kind of narrowing it down. I'm kind of funneling everything down into this because it's relative, it's contextual, to today's topic. So we have 5 cats of our own. My daughter has moved in with us. She brought 2 more with her. And the cat that we have has been with us for a very long time. My kids have pretty much just known this cat all their life. It was an adult when we got it 12 years ago. We don't know how old it was then, but it was the most beautiful cat. His name was Stanley. He had a great personality. I think he thinks he's a dog because he connects with other human beings that way. And he was always my favorite cat, and I feel like Stanley picked me out as his favorite human, which I always loved because I'm not a cat person. And I grew rather fond of this cat, and I just loved it to death. And we noticed it getting sick or appearing sickly. But with cats, I'm apprehensive to take them into the vet right away because I've experienced this before where we've had another cat named Hugo that we thought it was dying. I mean, it's a relatively young cat. We thought it was dying. If you could have seen it, you would have thought the same thing too. We were worried to death. We were beside ourselves. We're like, oh, what are we gonna do? It's such a sweet cat. But not anything like Stanley, but so we took it into the SPCA, the vet there, and they couldn't quite figure it out. This is sometime like a year and a half ago. And they said, we can't figure out what's quite wrong with it, but he acts like his leg or his hip is hurt a little bit. And so they tried doing some things for it, told us to take it to the emergency vet overnight, have them monitor it. They were looking at him, they said, well, we wonder if he's had like a fall or a bad jump or something and hurt himself. We think that he's just a little bit hurt and he's just trying to stay low key, trying to heal up. Which is exactly what happened. By the time it was over with, I had spent $1,200 on this cat. And I said, never again, never again. We have another cat that is older than the hills. This cat was older than Stanley. And she looks like she's been knocking on death's door for well over a year. But we knew she's just really old. We thought she'd be the first to go. And miraculously, this cat has bounced back and is thriving now. It just mystifies all of us. And we just can't believe it happened to Stanley first. And it was a very hard day for me when I took the cat in. As it turns out, I'm going to keep this as short as I possibly can. As it turns out, the cat probably had lymphoma. And, you have all these guilty feelings, like, what if I would have brought the cat in sooner? And the vet even told me, look, cats are resilient. They're predatory animals. They don't like to show weakness. And by the time you even know by the time you even surmise that something might be wrong, it's too late. And something was wrong with this cat well before it ever gave any signs that something was wrong. So there's really nothing you could have done. And you could take some measures now, but it probably wouldn't be good for the cat. And anytime the vet offers alternative, any kind of alternative for an animal like that, I always feel like it's more for the humans than it is for the animal. And I said no. And I was doing all right until they started talking about euthanizing the pet, and I had to make that decision, and then I just broke down. And it was very hard for me, and I bawled like a baby, man. I did. I was silent crying, but I was crying nonetheless. It was extremely rough that day. And so while I was there, I asked the vet another question. I said, look, my wife called me into the room a couple of nights ago and told me she needs me to feel something. And I thought at first she meant on her, because she's always worried that something's going to happen to her. And so, she's always having me check her for, like, do I have a lump here? What is this spot here? What is it? I thought that's what it was going to be. But I go in there, and on the bed is my dog that we've had for nearly 12 years. And she says, do you feel these lumps on the back of his leg and in the back and on his neck? I said, yeah, that's not boding well. That's not boding well. So I mentioned this to the vet while I was there, and she says, your dog probably has lymphoma and you need to get it into the vet immediately. So after we had Stanley put down, I went to the SPCA and I made an appointment for the dog that same day. I got him in. The vet checked him out, and she immediately stood up. Her eyes were wide, and she goes, this isn't good. I'm gonna let you know right now that it could be several other things, but generally it comes down to one thing, and that is your dog probably has lymphoma. Now, because the dog acts a little bit aggressive when you're checking him, like, up closely and everything, even with the muzzle on, she had a hard time getting him to allow her to check him very well, or not to check him, but to take samples. So I've got to give the dog some meds tonight and tomorrow morning before we take him in, and then they're going to confirm whether he has lymphoma or not. It could be a possibility of other things, but she said you probably have just a matter of months. Now, they were trying to talk us in. They're trying to talk me into getting the dog other shots prior to the head vet coming in. And so when she told me that he had only months, I said, well, there's no point in getting the other shots, is there? She goes, no. Now, if that doesn't tell you something, I don't know what does. So now I'm having to deal with two things, and I've got to break two pieces of news to my family that day. And while my older kids kept a stiff upper lip, my youngest one, he kind of sobbed his way through it. And so it doesn't feel good. And it's not just because it's an animal, but anytime you see the extinguishing of a life, when you see the light go out of the eyes, it's unless you're a hunter and you're going out hunting prey, that's different. But when the light and the life is going out of something, it's troublesome. And I'm talking about with anything, even, you know, if you've experienced this with a spouse or a parent or a child or a family member or a friend that has lost their life due to any number of reasons, it's hard. And let me try to get my thoughts straight here. The impact of the loss will render grief, different kinds of grief on a spectrum. With an animal, it's going to be hard, but it will be nowhere near the loss that you experience with, let's say, a parent or a spouse or a child or a really close friend. It's nowhere near the same. And the level of angst that you might feel will depend upon the connectivity you had with the individual or the other thing. And connectivity makes all the difference in the world. Your connectedness to something else just speaks volumes in terms of how much you will have to cope with. And I was very connected to Stanley. I'm not connected so much to Roxy, this other old cat that we have. So we lost her. It wouldn't bother me nearly as much. But like I said, it all comes down to connectedness. And so when you're experiencing these emotions, you might have a way of dealing with them that is okay. You might be trying to bury your feelings. You might be trying to cope with them in maladaptive ways. I feel like I deal with my grief in a healthy way. So that's why I want to share this with you here now. And I don't have a method. It's not a thought out process. It's just simply what I do. And it's taken me, almost 54 years to figure some of these things out and to put things into what I believe is their proper perspective. So I think, what I try to do is I try to think of, I try to, first of all, just sit down and try to accept what has actually occurred. I don't want to sit in denial of what happened. I try to say, well, it is what it is. I remember when my father passed away, and I was in the room with him when he did. And that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part for me was not even the burial. It was getting to the church and seeing the hearse in front of the church and knowing that it was for him. That tore me up. But I went in and I sat down and I thought about it. And this just is what it is. I can't deny what it is. Instead of trying to make it into something else and go, this can't be happening, I wish it didn't happen, I just say, it did happen. It did happen. And I also don't try to focus on becoming happier. Like, there are people that will medicate their woes with alcohol, with sex, with drugs, with entertainment. They'll try to make themselves laugh. They'll use other people around them to try to make them feel better. And a lot of times people will just retreat and they'll do all sorts of things, but I don't try to make happiness or joy my objective at that point. I feel like I need to just kind of stew and marinate in my own thoughts and feelings. Like I said, I don't believe that I necessarily do it the best way. I don't set out to do it a certain way. It just happens that it turns out. And it unfolds in this manner. But I don't try to be happy. I don't try to rush myself into feeling better. One of the things that makes me think of it in this way is, as growing up, I read my Bible a lot, and in ancient times, their customs, one of their customs in the Bible was when when somebody passed away, it could have been somebody great or it could have just been someone close, they would either shave their beard or they would put dust, cover themselves in dust and ashes, or they would just grieve and fast for a week. It's like they had to get it out. I mean, they actually assigned 7 days to do this. And I've always thought about that and thought, what if I didn't try to hurry myself out of this or deny it? I actually sat and dealt with it, admitted it to myself, and just milked my feelings out. And I think that is what I try to do. And I think the reading the Bible like that was my greatest influence. So I really do try to stew and marinate in all my grief, because I feel like it's good for me to just experience all of it, to get it out of the way. I've lost other people in my life. I've lost my father. I've lost friends. I've lost family members, just like you have, right? And as a Christian, personally, for me, if I know that the other person has placed their faith in Jesus Christ because of what He has done, not because of what we've done, I have that hope of knowing that I'll see them again, and that does mitigate a lot of the grief that I have. Now, a lot of people don't believe what I believe, and I'm not trying to convince you or sway you to my side. I'm just telling you where I'm coming from. So that makes a difference. When I lost my father, I handled it in a much different way than I would with somebody that did not have that assurance of eternity, of eternal life in heaven. It would be much, much different. I remember when I was a little boy, I had a friend named Jerry. We were both probably 5 years old. And I remember going to Sunday school with him. I remember him being in vacation Bible school. And I remember sitting in the pew with him right next to me. He always had a little New Testament with him. And I just really liked Jerry. Him and we just liked each other a lot. I don't have a lot of memories of him, but I remember liking him a lot. Well, he was out fishing with his father one day. It was either in a creek or a culvert or something. And Jerry fell in, and his father was too drunk to save him, and Jerry passed away. And I remember going to his funeral. At least I think I do. I don't know if it's an imaginary memory, but I remember all of that taking place. I don't remember grieving over that, but losing people for me goes a long ways back. And being a pastor's kid, I'm well acquainted with funerals. I'm well acquainted with watching people pass away. I remember my dad and I going to nursing homes and hospitals, visiting people. My dad had a radio program. I remember sitting in that with him, and I remember sitting up on the in a little mini pew behind him while he was preaching. So I was very connected to my father. And so when my father passed away, it meant a lot to me. But I experienced it in a different way than many people do. And so I would hope that you would think about that. And if you have questions about that, or if you're curious, if it's stimulated any kind of curiosity in you whatsoever, feel free to DM me or leave a question down below, and I'll talk to you some more about it. But another thing I try to do when I've suffered loss is I try to only talk to, if I'm going to talk about how I feel, I only talk to people that I know I can trust. Like, in other words, there's a lot of people that you might want to blab your mouth. Some people want to clam up. Some people want to talk to everybody. What I would say is be very careful about running your gator to any number of people, because there are some people who just frankly wouldn't or couldn't care less. And you're going to know that. As soon as you have vintage your spleen, you're going to feel kind of weird. You're going to feel awful about having said something. Well, some people are not plugged in. Maybe they wouldn't. But I would say if you only talk to people that would actually be interested in your life, or that could relate. Maybe someone else has talked to you before about their loss that's similar to yours, and so you could actually say something to them, and they're going to understand. So be very careful about who you talk to and how much you talk about it. I do think that retreating into yourself is good for you. I think it does make you stronger. I'm not saying you have to clam up and just not talk at all. I have a tendency to do that a little bit with some things, but there are some things I just would rather just keep my mouth shut about, and I just would rather like go off by myself and nobody talk to me and just allow me to sift through my thoughts. And I do think that's important to do. And I also, another thing I do a lot, and you might think this is kind of weird, I talk to myself quite a bit. I mean, out loud. I mean, I'm talking to myself now as I'm looking into this camera. I'm looking at this camera as though it's some kind of friend of mine. I'm just kind of relaying information, as if you were sitting right here with me. I don't always have that luxury though, so I will oftentimes console myself by imagining that there is a second me right there, and I have learned how to cope and work through things and rationalize events in life that occur by tapping into that other part of myself. And while that might sound weird to you or look strange if anybody else was to walk up on me, it's worked for me. Another thing I really focus on a lot is learning how to be thankful. While I can't bring somebody back, or I can't unring a bell, I can't undo something, whether I'm suffering grief because of disappointment or because of anger or because of some kind of loss. I may not be able to change things, but I will try to find something in all of that I can be thankful for. Like when I lost my father, I could be thankful that I knew I was going to see him again. I was thankful that I had him as my father, that he was an influence in my life, that there was so much to take away from my relationship with him. I was thankful for that. With Stanley, well, I was just a cat, I know to some of you people. I'm thankful that we were able to give it a good home. And with Tucker, well, he won't be around for long, my dog. I'm thankful that he's had such a good home. We've all been very affectionate with him. All he's ever wanted to do is please us. He's a great dog. I'm so thankful that we had such a good dog. And, that if it wasn't this thing that was going to take his life, it would just be something else. But I'm thankful that we were able to provide a good home for him. Because I'm in places every day where I don't think people take very good care of their animals. But we took good care of ours. I'm thankful that they had a home like that. And so I try to do that with whatever I'm experiencing grief with. And that really helps me a lot. And I can't say that by making this video, I feel like that's going to help me. That's not why I'm not making this because I think that in some way this is going to help me. I'm saying this because you might be experiencing the same thing. And if you aren't, you will be at some point. So try to accept reality as it's presenting itself to you. Stew and marinate in your thoughts and your feelings. Take time to get by yourself, talk to yourself if you have to, and really work through everything. Don't try to deny yourself anything. Like if you feel like, and I'll tell you what, here's something I really want to say, especially to you men. If you're not comfortable with crying, get by yourself and just let it all out. Let it all. And there's a lot of men who say, don't cry in front of women. It's not good. I will say I have to agree with that. I actually do agree with that. I know it might shock and surprise some of you, but I do think it's best if a man does not cry in front of other women. It does not work out in the end. But get by yourself and let everything come out. Whether you're angry, whether you're sad, whether you feel remorse, get it out. If you have to let out your tears and your feelings by just talking to God, do that too. So I want to say that a lot of men might feel like they need permission to do that. I'm telling you, you do. If you don't hear it from anybody else, hear it from me. But there's a time and place for it. But it's important to get all these emotions and feelings out. Just be careful who you do it around. If you're going to talk to others about it, be very choosy. And you will get through it. I oftentimes tell myself, regardless of what I'm feeling, it's all temporary. In fact, my wife asked me one day, it was like, "What's wrong with you?" I said, "Well, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and don't worry about it. I'll get through it. It's just temporary." And that's exactly how I feel. And if you can tell yourself that, then it will be just temporary. Don't be one of these people who just forever grieves, because it turns into a grudge after a while. It turns into irrational thinking and turns into a sense of unfairness. And then it ultimately culminates in a victim mindset. None of those things have any basis in reality. So make sure you work through everything. Give yourself permission. Allow yourself to feel, think, and say whatever you want, even if you have to do it in isolation. But I think it will make you stronger. I think it'll help you get more in touch with yourself. And I think you'll tap into a part of yourself that realizes that you can rely more upon self-soothing than you can upon anybody else meeting your needs, okay? But don't forget to turn to God likewise. There's nothing like speaking to Him. And I'll leave that as the last note here. And I just really hope that's spoken volumes to you. I'm not saying, like I said, it's maybe not the best way, may not be the only way, but it is how I deal with grief, regardless of the object of our angst. Okay? All right. If you like this hat, check out the description below. It's one of my Dockers caps. It's still kind of cool out here today. I'm a lightweight when it comes to cooler weather. You can get this for like 15% off. I'll give you a link down below. Look at the description for other things likewise, beard stuff. If you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button. If you want to donate to this channel to help support it, I'll leave a PayPal link down below, or you can hit the super thanks button. And I thank each and every one of you that do that. I'm ever so grateful. And in the end, you really don't have to if you don't want to, but I would be grateful if you did. It means a lot to me. And I just hope that you guys, what you get out of this whole video, I hope is just that you understand that you can make it through it. And I do believe that the way I handle grief is good for your mental health. And I don't know, maybe I should stop talking because I feel like I've said enough. But anyway, I hope you guys aren't experiencing anything that's really got you down. I hope you can come back to this video at another time if it does hit you. All right, guys, I appreciate you listening. I thank you for your time. I'll catch you in the next one. In the meantime, be wise.